Hello everyone, I'm Shemcat, and on this channel I love to talk about things literally only I care about. And now I'm going to do that some more by ranking all 70 characters in LEGO Batman the video game, but on the DS. This will be done primarily from a speedrun perspective, because 16 years later there really isn't any other reason to play the game. However, I'll also look at their performance in the story and in free play. An important aspect of a character's strength is their specific abilities which help them interact with the levels. For example, Batman can activate hero panels, double jump attack, use suit swappers, throw batarangs, and use grapple panels. In contrast, the Penguin can use villain panels, walk tightropes, use travel chutes, has a gun, and can collide. There are other skills a character can utilise, but having a wider variety of strong abilities is a large factor in determining a character's strength overall. When talking about a character, I may not mention all of these abilities, but I'll be sure to explain them when they first show up, as well as showing them in the corner when talking about the character, since I doubt everyone will know every ability of every character, because only a nerd of galactic proportions would know that stuff. Some characters may have strengths outside of their listed abilities, mostly in the form of unintended speedrun tech, and since this is from the perspective of the speedrunner, I'll value this very highly. Alright, now we have the criteria and explanation out of the way, let's get into the ranking. For the first section of this tier list, we have the ultra bottom tier, which is comprised of just two characters in place 70 and 69 out of 70. The first and weaker of which is Lucius Fox. This placement comes from the fact that he really offers nothing, only having one ability, which is to activate hero panels, which function as levers that only heroic characters can activate. Literally every other character in this game has at least two. There is no reason to choose Lucius Fox, even compared to generic policemen or goons, who at least come with a gun. Thankfully everyone can either activate hero or villain panels, so we don't have a Petunia Dursley from LEGO Harry Potter situation. The final character here, taking the nice position of 69, is the Poison Ivy Goon, not a command. Their abilities are to activate villain panels, which function the same as hero panels, as well as the immunity to green poison on the ground and as gas. In some regard, I could see this character being even weaker than Lucius Fox, since there are more villain characters than heroes, therefore making the latter even more valuable. However, since the PI Goon has poison immunity, I'll give the edge to them. This can be helpful early on for easy traversal around certain areas, as well as meaning you aren't constrained to Robin's anti-poison suit, but falls off very hard since it's one of the only abilities to be made redundant by an extra, this being invincibility. With this equipped, Lucius Fox will actually become better than the PI Goon, with them losing their only niche over other characters. With that out of the way, we can move on to bottom tier, where characters are going to be generally very outclassed, but will at least provide something, even if their impact is pretty limited. Honestly, the characters still are pretty decent, and significantly better than Lucius Fox and Poison Ivy Goon. We start this tier off with a tie between 5 characters who are all reskins of one another. Riddler Goon, Two-Face Goon, Joker Goon, Goon, and Policeman Brainwashed. These guys have guns, which allow for enemies to be taken out from a bit more of a distance, alongside being able to break things without losing any time to punch them, again also from a distance. Guns are missing from some of the top and high tiers, so can provide an advantage over them, albeit a limited one. Commissioner Gordon, Harvey Bullock, Policeman, Policeman Sergeant, Policewoman, Security Guard, and Security Guard Officer are the next characters, all tied for 57th. They are exactly the same as the goons from before, but since heroes are rarer than villains, they are a bit more useful. And yes, you heard that right, in this wacky world of fiction, the cops are the heroes. Rounding out the bottom tier, we have Mr. Freeze Goon and Penguin Goon. They have a small advantage over the other goons, in that they are immune to cold conditions, but since that has the same issues I discussed about poison immunity, except it's just seen in fewer levels, they are still bottom tier characters. Low tiers will have similar issues to a lot of the bottom tiers, but with some additional strengths that make them just a bit better. The worst of these low tiers is the Mr. Freeze Bodyguard. Whilst he offers a strong one-shot ability, the rate of fire just becomes so much slower, and so out of combat becomes a detriment. Next up are the other bodyguards: Riddler Bodyguard, Two-Face Bodyguard, Penguin Bodyguard, Joker Bodyguard, and Bodyguard. The thing that sets these guys apart is the fact they are immune to both poison and cold. Yet again, this is made redundant by the invincibility extra. However, before getting it, it's pretty convenient since you can go pretty much anywhere without having to switch between characters or use a suit swapper. Taking up the 47th spot is a tie between some unlockables from Villain Hunt: Dr. Hugo Strange and Ventriloquist and Scarface. Instead of immunity, these guys can use grapple hooks, which is an important movement option in a bunch of levels. However, outside of that they can't offer much, so they stay in the low tier, alongside being outclassed by other grapple characters. One spot above in position 46, we have Dr. Jeremiah Arkham, who is the same as the last two, only a hero, which is slightly rarer and therefore slightly better. And with that, the low tiers are completed. The mid tier is definitely one of the hardest to rank, since there are a lot of new abilities that all have their uses, but aren't super dominating. None of these characters are bad per se, they just have the tools to get past their specific obstacles, and that's that. The first of these mid tiers is Clayface, who has one job, and that is to pull down breakable walls with his super strength, used in some villain levels and for a bunch of collectibles. One of the main strengths of super strength is that it's one of the few abilities that neither Batman nor Robin can obtain in story, either through their base gear or through swoop swappers. At position 44, Killer Croc has a similar issue since, like Clayface, he has super strength, but also immunity to poison, which can make him a little better, at least before you get invincibility. This can allow him to grab collectibles like the one here before that point, which is pretty nice as well. Since they share the same attributes, we have Poison Ivy Alternate, and Pamela, Lillian Isley sharing the same spot. These characters introduce walking over tightropes, which can oftentimes just be avoided by gliding, as well as acrobatic panels, which allow them to reach much higher elevation. The reason these skills aren't too valuable is mostly just due to being so common, and how Robin, who is on every Fruitcake composition, has both of these skills, and a lack of interesting speedrun tech with the acrobatic panels. She also technically has a gun, but oh my god, it's so bad, like it stops her in place to use it, and it's not even like it will one-shot or has extra range, it's just a normal gun effectively. Someone who doesn't stop when using their gun is the next character, Bane. He also has access to super strength but nothing else, but for that he has a lot more uses than Clayface. Next up is Man-Bat, who is super strong and offers the new ability of gliding to get over large pits. Despite this ability having a lot of speedrun tech associated with it, thanks to gliding it out of bounds, or skipping over some sections thanks to the extra distance you get, I still think Man-Bat is a fairly weak character, since after falling from a height, he suffers a stun that slows him down in comparison to other gliding characters. Your other options will also have this stun, just requiring a much greater height to trigger. This also may just be placebo, but he also feels like he glides lower than other characters, increasing the difficulty of certain tricks. Mr. Freeze is pretty comparable to Bane, with the addition of cold and poison immunity, which makes him a little better. His gun will also freeze enemies, which can stop them whilst you do something else, or give a quick 2-shot, although at the cost of slightly lower rate of fire. The Huntress has a similar set of abilities to Poison Ivy, just trading poison immunity for a gun that isn't terrible, but for some reason isn't listed as one of her abilities. She also has the benefit of being a hero, which is a little more appealing, and also hatchets. Whilst apparently being one of the most powerful characters in the DC canon, Harley Quinn and Dr. Harleen Quinzel are pretty average in this game, having a similar set of abilities to Poison Ivy. The reason I'd say the Jesters is stronger is due to her hammer. Despite being a very slow attack pattern, the hammer is classed as a weapon. In LBDS, characters with weapons have an advantage over those who don't, as bosses won't be able to block as frequently, leading to faster fights. Despite this, Harley still has the worst weapon just due to how slow it is. In contrast, Talia has a very good weapon, making her the strongest of the characters who specialise in using tightropes and acrobatic panels, even without having a gun. Next up we have some gliding characters that feel much better to use than Man-Bat, Killer Moth and Killer Moth Alternate. They lack super strength, but come with a gun and a much easier time dealing with high up locations, followed by Firefly, who also has immunity to poison and cold. Despite only having 2 abilities, hero panels and gliding, I'd say Alfred is the strongest mid-tier, as we've already established gliding as being pretty strong for speedrun tech, as well as his umbrella acting as a weapon to use against bosses, making him the most speedrun friendly out of all these characters, even if he's a little underwhelming outside of that. The high tiers are also very tricky to rank, since these characters are going to have a lot of different skills individually. They will either be very practical in the speedrun, or have skills that make them pretty universally useful when playing through the levels more casually. The first pair are Batgirl and her alter ego Barbara Gordon. She has a variety of abilities I haven't showcased yet on this tier list, but the one I'll focus on here is the Batarang. This is a pretty versatile projectile that can be used to damage bosses before fighting them, or break boxes from afar, just like a gun can. There are also a handful of Batarang panels, which require these specific characters to get past. She comes equipped with a double jump, suit swapper, and the ability to use grapple links as well. She will be much higher if not for being significantly outclassed by Batman in terms of combat and grapple animations, who isn't free-play exclusive and is available from the start. On paper, Mr. Zsasz looks to be a pure downgrade compared to Batgirl, since he lacks the suit swapping as well as the Batarang. Whilst this is true, the addition of his weapon means he's a much faster character against bosses, as well as having a faster animation on grapple pulls, saving seconds here and there. The Joker and the Joker Tropical don't have much of a speedrun application, but are still really useful. One of the nicest things about him would have to be his double jump. On top of providing one of the best ways to get rid of enemies without the one-shot extra, this being to double jump attack and then down them from there, one of the most important pieces of speedrun tech also comes from them, being the grapple clip. This is done by facing away from the piece you want to grapple to, double jumping and at the peak of the jump, turning back, and then you get up-warped to the top of the grapple. In the 24th spot, we've got Ra's al Ghul, who is almost exactly the same as the two Jokers, just lacking his throwing cards and instead having a weapon. Instead of being useful in a couple places, Ra's is one of the best characters in almost every boss fight, getting him to high tier and a placement above the Clown Prince of Gotham. The Riddler and the Riddler suit are our next characters, who have a similar set of skills. They bear a weapon for boss fights as well as a gun, which can help get some early damage or break objects from afar. They do like poison immunity, but that's whatever most of the time. The final character in this group of dudes with similar skills is Azrael. He has the double jumps as well as a weapon. Whilst cold and poison immunity are his strongest skills, he also comes with super strength, which is pretty rare all things considered, and so fills him with a pretty nice niche, especially with how mediocre most of the other strength characters are, filling up the lower end of mid-tier. Now in the top 20, we see Tim Drake and Robin, our other character for the hero story levels. They can use tight ropes and acrobat panels, like Talia or Harley Quinn, alongside Batarangs for some longer range utility. Most importantly, however, is that Robin is one of the only characters who can use travel shoots, which you are usually forced to take, even in free play. This therefore gives them a ton of usage, especially in Heroes since those levels are designed around Robin's abilities. But this isn't the sole reason Robin is so high. This is because of the suit swapper. He only gains two abilities from this. One is poison resistance, which is but the other is the magnet suit, which allows him to walk on magnetic panels. This is so important because he is the only character who can do this, therefore placing him into every single free play loadout. He has good utility in a lot of movement sections, a pretty rare ability that is used frequently, as well as an exclusive ability that makes Robin and Tim Drake a very well-rounded character and a solid high tier overall. Our next spot has a lot less to talk about now. Nightwing and Dick Grayson are clones of Robin, but instead of using fists to fight with, they use a baton. This is much better at dealing damage to bosses, and so makes these two a little better. Catwoman, Catwoman Classic, and Selina Kyle. These are some of the most underrated characters in the game in my opinion. Just based on her abilities alone, Catwoman is actually pretty strong, being almost a hybrid of Batman and Robin. Grappling in double jumps like Batman, and then the tight ropes and acrobat panels are Robin. However, the thing I think makes Catwoman one of the strongest characters in the game is actually how quick a lot of her animations are, which make her one of the best people for fights against non-boss enemies, such as goons or police. Her downed attack, for example, has so little lag, you can finish off a downed enemy, and before the other has a chance to get up, down that one too. Something impossible for any other character. Final character before we get to the top tiers of LEGO Batman is the Penguin, my personal favourite character. He is the primary character we like to use for gliding. Maybe it's just placebo, but he feels a lot better for these tricks compared to many of the others. His short stature also allows him to use travel shoots, just like Robin, and he can also use tight ropes, although since he can also glide, he can therefore just skip most of these. A big part of the Penguin is his trick umbrella. Whilst the gun part leaves a lot to be desired given he halts when shooting, his close quarters attacks are some of the best. Since it's a weapon, he shreds through bosses, and since the attacks are fast and sweeping, he gets through non-boss enemies faster than almost anyone, even without the one-shot extra equipped. The top tiers of LEGO Batman are all here for one primary reason. The sole ability I'm yet to talk about. Demolition canisters. On their own, they have story uses in almost every single hero level, and a fair few villain levels, especially when considering the additional collectibles. Since they can one-shot any enemy even without extras, demolition canisters are also one of the best ways to get rid of multiple enemies, or goons that come in between boss phases, by timing the explosion for when they've both descended. Powerful as this may be, this would be ignoring the most important part of the demolition canisters, and the fact that they have torn the speedrun of this game in half. By placing the canister just before a door, you can jump over it and that'll push you through, taking you to the next loading zone. The time save potential this has for the speedrun cannot be understated, good enough to carry these characters up to the top tier. The first of these is the Scarecrow and his alter ego, Professor Jonathan Crane. Whilst he does also bring along immunity to poison, he freezes when throwing his orb projectiles to attack, which makes him slower in a lot of cases when dealing with breakable objects, especially thanks to the limited range as well, making him the weakest bomb character. Two-Face, Harvey Dent, Black Mask and Hush all have the same attributes and animations, and start the top 10 all tied for 7th. Whilst they have no immunity to poison, the guns which they dual wield are way more effective than Scarecrow's orbs when it comes to shredding through objects without losing distance, so ranks them above him. Next up in 5th and 6th are SWAT and SWAT Officer respectively. Whilst you'd think the Officer would be better thanks to his rocket launcher that can one-shot weaker enemies, it loses out on rate of fire as well as projectile speed, which makes misses more punishing and makes it more difficult to get rid of multiple objects, which is enough to make the regular guy better in my eyes. They also both have the ability to use grapple pads, which is always a pretty convenient tool to have. Even though he's the first character you unlock and the namesake of the game, this doesn't stop Batman being one of the best characters in his own game. Of course he comes with the abilities I've already talked about for previous characters, such as grappling, double jumps and batterings, but he also comes with a suit swapper ability that gives him access to demolition canisters so he can perform bomb clubs, which is done all throughout the story mode speedrun. Even though he's already the best character in story mode, his utility doesn't end there. Batman has a unique set of animations for punching compared to everyone else, and in certain cases, that can lead to very significant time saves. One of which is in the villain variant of Botanical Gardens. For some reason, by doing Batman's first 2 punches, you barely scrape the trigger to go into the next loading zone, saving a ton of time. However, Batman is arguably outclassed by his free-play exclusive clone characters, Bruce Wayne and Batman Classic, who are tied for 2nd. They appear to have the same abilities and the same animations, so what makes these guys more useful? Well, the truth is, these animations aren't quite the same, and it allows them to clip into the blue brick machines, allowing some out-of-bounds movement outside the scope of the bomb clip. Whilst Batman can do these as well, he performs them slower overall. This pair can't actually do the clip in Botanical Gardens, however, but for overall usage, I figured these two deserve to be above Batman. I guess they're also still Batman, but still, these Batman better. Slightly. We've gone through 69 characters so far, with only 1 remaining. The peak of LEGO Batman. The best character in the entire game who demands respect from the rest of the cast. The moment you've all been waiting for. The number 1 character in LEGO Batman the video game DS is... the Mad Hatter. No, this is not a bit, he is genuinely the best character in the game. Let's take a look at his abilities. Villain panels, alright, pretty standard. A gun, always pretty good, can't complain. Even better that it's normal and doesn't freeze him in position. He can also use travel shoots. Very nice, as this ability is resigned only to himself, the Penguin, and the Robin Squad, even though travel shoots are seen very commonly. And finally, demolition canisters. The difference this time being the Mad Hatter's short legs mean that the sweet spot for bomb clips is right next to the door, rather than a few steps back, which eliminates any tight positioning and allows for faster and more consistent clips, as there's no risk of being too far back or too far forward. Unfortunately, this does make some bomb clips much harder or even impossible, whilst also creating some that only he can perform. So it can sometimes be a trade-off. However, in almost every single scenario, the Mad Hatter is the best bomb clipper for the job, and in my opinion, the best character in LEGO Batman the video game on the DS. Well, that's quite a long list, and every character ranked by their utility in the game, outside of custom characters because they simultaneously have everything and nothing, and so putting them at number 1 would have been a bit of a cop-out. Actually not quite true, custom characters can't have demolition canisters. But of course, this is all just my opinion. A lot of these takes do depend on what skills you value the most, so these lists will always have a lot of subjectivity. Maybe I rank Lucius Fox too low, or the Mad Hatter too high. Let me know your thoughts on the list, or if you agreed with my points or not. Thank you for watching.